Hey, what's up, guys? Following up on some of the comments and questions I had from a couple weeks ago about like things y'all wanted to hear about. I see this one comment on here and has a lot of thumbs up, so a lot of people wanted to hear about this. Okay, here's the question or comment. Something I'd like to see you talk about is fishing during the fall drawdown on lakes without grass. This seems to be the time of the year that getting bites isn't too hard, but getting bigger fish can be really tough. You're already doing a good job. Keep up the good work. Okay, so I'm assuming you're talking about certain lakes have drawdowns, certain ones don't. I know the ones that I've been to before are a lot of the TVA lakes. They have drawdowns. Other lakes, I'm trying to think. I don't know if you call them drawdowns. I don't know when all the drawdowns actually start happening. I think they start happening around now, like in October and stuff. So the ones I've gone to, I actually like the drawdown. I actually prefer the lakes to get drawdown in the fall because the fish are moving shallow. So me and Ish talked about this a long time ago, where we talk about when we like to throw topwaters and even frogs. It's weird how, everyone always thinks, the lake's rising, or when water rises, everyone likes to go like up shallow. I go up shallow because I have to, not because I really want to. How about that? Okay, and the reason is yes, fish move shallow when the lake rises, but it's so hard to figure out where they're going to be, and to me, it's the most random times to fish shallow water is when the lake rises. Every once in a while, you can figure out a pattern. But for the most part, to me, what we've seen is it spreads them out. It makes them very random. They go up there kind of like looking around for stuff, but they're not set up on stuff, if that makes sense. Now, I'm not talking about if it floods like 10 feet and they're up in parking lots and things like that. What I'm talking about is when the lake rises, there's usually cover everywhere, right? So there's more cover. Even on lakes that don't rise very much, that's even worse because the whole shoreline gets flooded. So you might go to a place that has zero flooded cover, and then all of a sudden it rises a little bit and everything's flooded now. So like it gets very random. Yes, fish are up there. Yes, they're somewhat easy to catch, but to me, it's very random. So I actually like the lake drawdown better. What happens is you've got all this water, and a lot of it's unproductive, or a lot of it is big giant flats, and they could be anywhere on those flats, and they are everywhere on those flats. They're everywhere and anywhere, and as it starts to come down, those flats dissipate. There's no flats anymore, and the flats that are now so let's just take, for example, you got a lake, and let's just take out all the deep water in it. And you got to envision that in your head. So you look at the lake, and you can adjust your map, and what normally would be 4 foot of water and above, or shallower, is all taken away. And so there's fish that live in that 4 foot of water, right? And now it drops down, and now you got that 4 to 8 foot of water. And now that's what is now the new 4 foot of water. If that makes sense, okay? Well, you just took out thousands and thousands of surface acres. And what happens is a lot of times that's the better 4 foot of water. It's closer to channels, it's closer to deep water, it's not so flat. You can see it, it's different. There's usually stumps there and other things. And you're like, well, why aren't there stumps on the other stuff? A lot of times those stumps on the shallow water get washed away because they see, one is they get air. I mean, that's how stumps and trees get taken away, is once air reaches it and not the water, it dries it out and can break it off. So a lot of those stumps that are in like the 4 foot of water, they don't see air very much. And so what happens is those are the ones that stay intact. Well, now they're right underneath the water surface, right? And they're right at the level, right, a fish would want to get at in the fall, like shallow. And so they might just be barely sticking out, or you can see them. And like I said, it puts a fish there. Now, if you had thousands of stumps, right, then they could be everywhere. That was what I was talking about, like a flooded, if something's flooded, they could be anywhere. But you get these isolated stumps on these smaller flats now in the right depth of water, it's easier to find those fish. It's easier to fish that water when the lake is drawn down. I like to throw a topwater. And so to me, that's the best time to throw a topwater, not when the lake's rising, when the lake's falling. So I get out to these places and I love it because it makes sense to me. It makes it easier to fish. It takes out a lot of the guesswork. It takes out a lot of the water that's random. And random to me, I don't like. I don't like fishing random ever. I tried to stay away from random fishing as much as possible. We were just on Lake of the Ozarks. There was a lot of docks. If you just get caught up in a rat race of fishing docks, it can be very random. You have to separate the good docks from the bad docks. You got to pattern docks, okay? Now that pattern could be a lot of different things. It could be where they are, docks are located, how big they are, what depth of water they are, backs of pockets, main lake, points, all those different things, right? So you have to figure out the pattern. Same thing with this. You have to figure out the pattern, but you can, even the comment said, it's not hard catching fish. It's harder to find big bites. Well, if you're getting bites, chances are you can catch big ones too, because you figured out the pattern. And I'm not too worried about the schooling stuff or any of that stuff, although that can come into play. But really, I like the drawdown. I like to fish fast, cover water. I will say this. I would say that when I say cover water, what that means to me is, I think, way different than everyone else. I know for a fact it is. Like I've been in too many fights with people that own battery companies, that people that have trolling motors, that have certain batteries on their trolling motors, and when they ask me, they're like, "Oh yeah, I have one 36-volt battery. That does me well." Well, you can't cover water on a 36-volt battery. If you think you can't, you're wrong. You're wrong. That I'm trying to tell you. If you gave me a 36-volt battery, one of them right now, in a day on one of those lakes, and I'm saying I'm covering water, I will burn that up in less than probably 4 hours. I'm pausing there, so I want y'all to think about what I just said. One 36-volt battery will last me 4 hours when I'm covering water. I have that thing on. I'm not letting off the button. I am covering water. I'm finding baits that allow me to cover water. So when I come to these lakes, or y'all's lakes, or whatever lake it is, and every once in a while I was like, how do you find these areas so quickly? Miles and miles of coverage. And I'm looking at things, and I'm assessing when I get a bite. And I'm fishing multiple places that look different on your bodies of water. So when I come there, I'm looking at the map, and I'm looking at flats, right? So I can look at flats. I can look at flats in creeks. I can look at flats on the main lake. I can see where the river channel runs. I can see the opposite side of the flat, which is usually on the other side of the river channel, which is going to be steeper banks. And I'm going to hit all those within a day. I'm going to hit all of it. I might run 30 minutes of a flat and then hop over to something that looks a little bit different and run 30 minutes of that, and then get on the deeper side and hit 30 minutes of that. And I'm just going to keep doing that. And all of a sudden, I'll get a bite. I'll get a bite somewhere. And then from that one bite, I'm going to assess what I'm looking at. I'm going to go, okay, well, it was on this, this, and this. Well, okay, here's something that looks just like it. I'm going to run to that. Now, doesn't mean I'm going to run that all day long. It's one bite. But I'm going to keep track of that one bite in my head. And I'm going to still steadily fish other stuff that's different and the same. And I'm going to keep doing that. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to look up and I'm like, man, I haven't caught a fish on 3-foot flat with stumps around it since I've been here. But every time I get in 1 foot, I get bit. Or, hey, every time I get on, I can catch them in 3 foot of water on stumps, but it has to be on the deep side. It has to be where deep water runs up next to it. And that's my pattern. So anytime I see a stump out there or flats with 3 foot of water that doesn't have any deep water, I'm not fishing those anymore. Eventually, I'm going to stop fishing those. So even if things change, though, say all of a sudden the next day I go out there and I don't catch any fish like that, and clouds came in, right? And it was sunny the day before, and all of a sudden I go check those stumps again in 3 foot of water with no deep water, and there's fish on them. I now know where all those places are because I've already hit them. So, like I said, what I'm trying to do is cover great amount of water with baits that I can do that with. I'm not slowing down because they're not hard to catch, guys. They're active. They're just spread out in the fall, and you got a lot of deep fish too. The deep fish I just don't rely on. Deep fish in the fall, it can be fun, it can be great. They're very hard to rely on. Now, live scope's making that different, but I'm just taking live scope out of it. I'm just talking about just regular fishing, and not live scoping fish or live scoping schools of fish that are suspended and things like that. We can get into that, but I'm going to keep it to where we can't see any of that. So we're going to do it off basic stuff, basic eyesight, basic map reading. Okay, because those are the two things I rely on way more than anything else in the fall, because I'm trying to establish a pattern. And so I just don't think what happens is people fish fast enough, and I don't know what it is. It's this whole thing about slowing down, and like they think that if they slow down, they're going to get bit. Yes, you can slow down and get bit, but it's great for people that are trying to slow down and find because they already know where fish are. But I'm going to your lake without zero knowledge. Like, I don't know. So when I go to these lakes, I'm trying to find fish first. And what's amazing is when you fish that way, you catch fish, and then you realize, man, I don't really have to slow down. Like, I just have to keep finding them. And usually they're very easy to catch. They're not that difficult. You just got to cover water. And so that's what I think when I say everyone, that's what I think people are missing, is covering water. So that's how I fish a lake like that. And listen, I also go from one end of the lake to the other, in the sense of I'll pick sections of that lake, because it's amazing in the fall. And maybe this has to do with turnover a little bit as well, but it's kind of like the springtime. The wintertime and summertime don't act the same. Well, actually they do act the same. Winter and summer act the same. They don't act the same as spring and fall. Spring and fall are very much alike. Summer and winter are very much alike. As in, when it's cold everywhere on the lake. When it's hot everywhere on the lake. It's not, in the springtime, it's hot and cold, and that little bit of 5 degree to 8 degree difference is giant in the springtime. Same thing in the fall. Like the fall turnover and different things, it makes a difference in the fall. So like I've always seen the fall that sections of the lake in the fall can be crucial, just like in the springtime, where you can be in the springtime and the guys up north are just crushing on them because the water's 4 or 5 degrees warmer. I'm not saying it has anything to do with the water temp in the fall, but it does seem to affect the fish where you're at on a lake more than any other time of the year, spring and the fall. Summer and winter, if the lake's 44 degrees on the south end, it's 44 degrees on the north end, and they're probably all doing the same thing. And it's just not, the pattern usually works everywhere. It's not that big of a deal. Not so much in the spring and the fall. Plus, they set up different in the spring and the fall. And usually the northern end of the lake is shallower and stuff and has more flats. You know, I was talking about flats, about covering water and things like that. And the south end usually doesn't have as many of those flats because the water is usually deeper. So I take all that into effect when looking at a lake. And now I'm not saying that the south end, you might get off all the flats. They might just be on certain banks. They might just all be on points. They might be on channel swing points and things like that. There's all kinds of different things, but fishing that time of the year is just about covering water, right? if you're going to take out, like I said, the suspending fish in the fall, which a lot of guys are going to now, right, with live scope. So that's just something to think about. Get a bait that you can cover. I don't care if it's a crankbait. I'm not throwing a spinnerbait or chatterbait or anything like that. It's going to be topwater, swim bait, crankbait, my hybrid hunter, like something I can cover, fluke, whatever I can do. You notice how they're all shad patterns too? Anything I can cover, swim jig, and go on and on. Anything I can cover, wind, crank, and move. And all I'm trying to do is get a bait by a fish quickly, and because they're gonna bite. Like you're gonna eventually run across some, and then you can start establishing a pattern. So that's how I view or fish the lakes in the fall, and especially ones that draw down like that. I like a lake to draw down. I think they're a lot more fun to fish. I like them when they do that. So don't ever be afraid that they're all of a sudden going to go deep or anything like that. Fish are used to this. They're used to the drawdown. Like they're not going to, they pull out. They pull out doesn't mean they actually go deep, if that makes sense. They just pull out, which that's what I like. They pull out of the creeks in certain places better. And it just, to me, it puts them on places better. Makes it easier to find. So there you go. Hope that helps, guys.